Hey guys, social psych. This is one of my favorite units. I think this is unit 9. I think I made that up. But I really, really, really like this chapter. I just think it's super interesting to evaluate kind of how we relate to people. Um, there you go. Okay, so in general, let me move my face from that. What is social psych? Um, It's so obviously, psychology, we've talked about that. So now we're adding social to the front. We've talked about developmental psych. We've talked about the biological perspective with this. We've talked about intelligence. So this is now really looking at it in the way that we think about one another, the way that people around us influence us, and just in general, kind of the habits and the psychological things that come out when we are with others. That's kind of the main thing here. Is some of these other things have looked at individuals, but this is really looking at that. Remember, we talked about that social cultural perspective. Well, this is really all about that. Okay. Okay, so if we kind of start off this idea right now, are people naturally judgmental? I would love to hear your answer on this because that's something that I think about a good bit. What do you think? Are we quick to judge? Is that a certain kind of human, or is that all of us? Are we all kind of naturally judgmental? The answer basically is yes, we are. So this term right here, person perception, is just the idea of how do we form impressions of ourselves and others. Um, that one's kind of those clear definitions there, how we form impressions of ourselves and others. So if you think about that, like how that comes about in these impressions that we've formed, like where does this develop from? How do we get these judgments? Does that come from our parents, how we were raised? Is it just a social creature? Um, and I don't think we can have a right answer to that. But like, let's say this happens, right? I have somebody in my life, and no, it's not Mr. Marchman, that'll leave me on red all the time and maybe never get back to me. Maybe you have one of those people in your life. I can imagine somewhat you do. And so when that happens, what are your judgments towards that? Is that person selfish? Is that person socially, like whatever it is? You start to form impressions there, right? Of them. Well, how you explain it is called your explanatory style. And we all have a different way of doing this, but every person's manner of explaining those events, that's considered their explanatory style. And you and me might differ, you and your siblings might differ, even though you grew up in the same household. So, like, for example, somebody leaves you on red. How do you explain that? Would you explain that the same way that somebody else would? Mr. Marshman and I can sometimes differ here. He is a little bit more, how do we say this? Optimistic, if you will. I tend to be a little bit more. He calls me a pessimist sometimes. I think I'm a realist. Anybody agree with that? Yeah, just kidding, but kind of. But yeah, two main explanatory styles that are pretty well known: pessimistic style and optimistic style. Right? You maybe a pessimist person might say, "Oh, they hate me. They left me on red. They're selfish. They're negative, negative, negative," right? An optimistic person is going to look at this and say, hey, maybe they were dealing with something. Maybe something came up, or maybe they're not a mean person. They're just blah, blah, blah. But you definitely, I would love to go around and ask you what you think you are. I do. I lean pessimistic, and I hate that about myself. I really do. And so it's a constant um, intentional thing I have to do to choose optimism. No, I don't think I'm this like dark. I just think I lean a little bit that way, and I want to be that way. So yeah, it's my challenge to you. Now, if you think about this, being pessimistic or being optimistic, that does have a big impact on your health, your mental health, and as we know, mental health has an effect on your physical health. So I'd really push you guys, if you feel like you're like me and you lean a little pessimistic, You need to intentionally insert ways to look optimistically. I would say that you have to be intentional if you tend to go pessimistic. My mom is so optimistic, and I love that about her. Okay, I'm gonna have him hand out this activity to you guys. So pause me here and hand this out, and yeah, and then I'm gonna keep going. So I'm gonna assume that you've unpaused me after they've done this. I'm gonna keep going. So all those things, those words that describe you, you had to say, does this happen or is it depend on the situation, right? It's always an interesting thing. I like to kind of go around and ask. Maybe I'll do that one later. But this word attribution, have you heard this word before? Attribute, what does it mean? I blame. Sometimes people say that. Okay, so what does it mean to attribute? It basically says that you're explaining somebody's behavior, right? You're giving, when somebody is acting a certain way, you are blaming it, or they say, and you're crediting that behavior to two things, one of two things. So in this picture here, you got let's say your best friend shows up to school one day and is a jerk to you. I'm sure that's happened at some point, right? They're super moody, they're a jerk. You have two ways to blame this or give credit. Okay? The first one is you blame the situation. Why was she moody? Anybody? Why was she moody? Maybe she spilled coffee on her that morning. Maybe her mom yelled at her that morning. Maybe, what else could have happened to your friend that morning? She got broken up with. Maybe she failed a test. Okay, that's the situation. What's the other option of how we credit somebody's behavior? Good answer. You blame it on the person, their disposition, like their natural character. You blame it on. So let's say so-and-so is moody. Why? They're a moody person. They're not nice. They're a crankster. So attribution theory says we usually pick one or the other. Okay, we give credit that way. But my question to you is, what do you think we pick more? Do you tend to blame the situation, or do you tend to blame the person? Now, how about this? Somebody is tailing you on the way to school. They are tailing you, and it's getting you hot and bothered. What are you doing now? Are you blaming the situation on that person? Or are you blaming them, their character, their disposition? Have a guess. So let's walk through this, okay? This person is tailing you. They are just right on you the whole time. I bet I'm right here. I bet you're like, oh my gosh, they are probably pregnant. They're in labor. The husband is in California for a medical conference, and they just need to get to the hospital and have their baby. That's it, right? That's what you do. And so what do you do? You say, hey, I'm sorry. Come on, pass me. Go for it. Right? That's what we do when somebody's tailing you. No, what do? We say, that is a crazy person behind me. They are an idiot. They are diabolical, blah, 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 blah. And so, no, you would never. You get mad back at them. You brake check them. Maybe you say some choice words. Maybe, you go slower. Have you ever done that? Unfortunately, I have. But I don't do that anymore because that's a longer story. Anyway, you probably don't do that, right? Or sorry, you probably do the second option more. So attribution theory, if I go back here, says, we blame this or this. We credit this or more. Well, next word. The fundamental attribution error, the error we make in attribution, is we tend to blame which one more? We blame the person more. So this says we tend to underestimate the situation that's going on, and we usually overestimate the person and their own disposition. So in that car story, we tend to not think about, hey, they're late for work, their boss said one more time they're late, or whatever it is, they're in a medical emergency. We rarely think about that. We overestimate the person and their disposition. This happens at school too. Let's say somebody is constantly sleeping in my class. Don't point any fingers. Or not constantly, but it does it enough. Teachers, what do you think happens here? Do we overestimate the person? Yeah, we're like, hey, maybe they're lazy. They don't care about school. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying that stuff can't be true. But our tendency right away is we tend to blame the person, not the situation. Maybe they're up all night because they've been working until 11 o'clock. Maybe they're in 6 APs and blah, 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 blah. We don't think about the situation quite as often. Okay? This happens with homelessness, right? Hey, maybe they lost their family. We don't think about the situation. We say, hey, they might be lazy, they are not motivated, get a job, those kind of things. Make sense? Okay. Now, this is a little bit true here too, right? Do we overlook our own flaws? Yes, we do. Okay. Now, what if it's you that's falling asleep in class? Now, what do we blame? No. If it's me, that's me. That person was lazy, but me, no. I had a really hard night. Let's say you show up to school and you're cranky, right? Oh, but it's because of this. It's because of this. When it's us, we totally change often how we explain things. Okay, so this is called the actor-observer bias. And it's got these two words in it for a reason, actor and observer. So it's basically saying if you are an actor in this story, if you're in the story, it says right here, those acting in a situation tend to attribute their behavior to external things. I slept because I had a hard night and I worked, right? I am in this play. But if I'm observing somebody else, oh, it's internal causes there. They're lazy. That's it. They're lazy. But me, no. I'm the actor in here. Me, Okay, does that make sense here? Now, this, however, is very, very closely related, and you will not see these two in the same answer choice because there's two all AP Psych teachers agree here. We are very self-serving. What does that mean? We make ourselves seem good. We just do. Okay, so we attribute when we succeed, we say, oh yeah, that's me. I am talented. I worked hard for that. I deserved it. That was me. That reminds me of that show Quarterbacks with Patrick Mahomes. If you saw him versus Kirk Cousins, Patrick Mahomes was like, yeah, that touchdown, that's me. That's me. And he literally said, like, that was all me. And Kirk Cousins, what he says is, it was the team, man. I couldn't have done it without this offensive lineman. It was all you, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, if we tend to give our successes to internal reasons, and when we fail, we like to blame it on other things. Other people, external things, luck. Why do we do that? Why do we take credit for the good things and not credit for the bad things? They talk about how a lot of that is you're protecting your ego here, that it helps protect your self-esteem. I get that right there, right? But you see this a lot with team sports, and maybe there's somebody on your team, and hopefully it's not you. When you win, you're like, yeah, I'm the best. And then when you fail, the blame game can tend to come out. That's in a not mature person. But even if we aren't saying it out loud, it does come up here in our head for self-protection. So the next question is, can this explain prejudice and discrimination? Why are we blaming? So that's the next part that we'll get to. All right. Good job. Peace.